You are listening to the Way of the Shaman podcast with your host, Kerri Husman. The content shared in the Way of the Shaman podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute professional or therapeutic advice. The views expressed by the host and interviewees reflect their personal experiences and opinions. Please consult with an appropriate licensed professional if you have any medical, psychological, or legal concerns.
Hello, and welcome to the Way of the Shaman podcast. I'm your host, Kerri Husman, and today we have Mora File joining us from Canada to learn more about shamanic divination and practice and her story with regard to learning about shamanic traditions and how shamanism found her. Welcome, Mora.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So glad to have you. And so tell us a little bit about how the work of Michael Harner found you.
Well, it came at a time of great loss and great sadness when my mother died. And as a healer for many, many years, I thought I had all the tools that I needed to process the grief and the loss. And I did not, and I got really sick after my mother died. And in the process of getting really sick, I put it out there. I need more tools. I need more tools in my toolkit. And a friend who I hadn't seen for a while had just come back from the 2-week intensive.
Oh.
She was filled with just restored power and energy and focus. And I was like, okay, whatever you have just done is what I need to do. And so that was in December, and in January was the first training of the Way of the Shaman. And I took that training and really never looked back. It really launched me into where we are now.
Wow. So even with that first workshop, you could feel some restoring of your own power from the loss and grief.
Yeah, it was a very, very powerful session. And, I think for many who are called to this work, usually there's something that has ignited within them that calls to them. I need something more. Mm-hmm. And so they're ready. People are ready when they come to this work. And that's the beauty and the power of how quickly this work can be integrated into, individuals' healing process. Yeah.
So how has your training in other health disciplines, you're a registered massage therapist, you have other healing tradition trainings, how has shamanism influenced that practice over the years?
Well, it's, these are all the tools that we have in our toolbox. There are so many wonderful practices out there for us to be learning. And for me, when I came to shamanism, the core shamanic practices really created a beautiful framework and a container for this compassionate work of the helping spirits. And it just has really helped to heal and open my heart in ways that are just very deeply profound and experiential. You have to go through this process as an independent kind of practitioner to understand how it touches and works with not just your heart but your spirit. Your spirit is healing on levels and in ways that again, sometimes words cannot describe what that is, but it's very, very powerful. So yeah, it's expanded. It's expanded how I can communicate with others about the importance of this work for spiritual healing. So, yeah.
And so when you think about the trainings and disciplines that you'd already had before shamanism found you, what do you think is different as far as the ethics of core shamanism and how that might influence one's decisions about going down this path?
Well, the beautiful, way that Michael Harner has really honored this practice is that it is a disciplined practice and it has very clear ethical boundaries, and we don't do any work without permission. And so we can have all kinds of insights and understanding, but if a person is not ready for the work, we honor that, right? And hold space. Right. And so, I have a very deep respect for the work because of this discipline practice and ethical and permission based kind of way that this work is done.
Yes, I couldn't agree more that the ethical foundation of this work is so powerful and sometimes not what a client wants. They want you to fix someone else or to get that person to leave me alone or to get my boss out of my hair and we are not working outside at all of the spirit of the individual who has consented to care.
Yeah.
And so I really deeply appreciate that. And even if it's not the popular answer sometimes.
Yes, yes. People want to be fixed, and we're trying to help educate people that maybe they're not broken in the way that they think, right? And that the power is about empowering them to take back what has been taken from them.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
Yeah, building that resilience. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
So, can you talk a little bit about a shamanic miracle? Something that happens that you've experienced, you've seen, or been a part of that has been a miracle healing story?
Hmm. Well, when I first began this work, because of how sick I was with the grief and loss of my mother, I had pneumonia. Um, taking all kinds of medications, and I think it was maybe the third workshop where we were doing extraction healing, and it really felt like something was energetically lifted off of my chest, and
Mm.
really feeling like a banker's safe, right? A banker's safe
Wow.
stores all of the sacred things that you store away, and as it was lifted off, it's like that door opened, and all of the important papers, all of the memories that I was holding on to just kind of went out and were scattered to the wind. And I remember taking a deep breath and thinking, "Oh, I don't have to carry those stories anymore. I don't have to
Right.
carry this energy of grief and loss and sadness to this level." And so that was a very profound healing for me, and really brought this deepening trust in how the helping spirits can show up and meet us exactly where we are on our journey, and support us if we're open to allowing for their work to come through. So that was one of the very profound experiences for me on my healing journey in the beginning.
Wow. So, I'm sure you've seen some of those images that people will use to describe grief and how that you have this container and the grief is very large inside of that container. And then over time, the container is able to hold that grief with more space, with more space to breathe, so to speak. So when you physically felt this safe open up and the weight of this safe being released, do you feel like that was just this beautiful metaphor for you that was being offered by the helping spirits to show how you could hold that grief differently?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. And then as time goes on and you take more classes, and we got into soul retrieval, and then looking at the aspect of self that was holding that grief and loss, that little one who didn't
Hmm.
want to lose her mother, right? And
Right.
we all have these little ones inside of us that are holding on for dear life, sometimes it feels like. And so when something is taken away from us, bringing those parts of us back into wholeness, and into that container that can, hold that grief and hold what is now a real truth, right? That we have power. We don't need to feel like we have been cracked open, right? I felt like my heart had been cracked open. And in the process of being brokenhearted, something else can come in, because a new energy, a new power comes into play here. And we're ready to grow in ways that we maybe were not thinking prior that we could grow, right? So,
Right. So you have a unique relationship with the Ganyengehaka people, otherwise known as Mohawk. Could you tell us a little bit about your story and your story with your connection?
Yeah. So I live just north of the Mohawk of the Bay of Quinty's here, and my stepmother is Mohawk from the Bay of Quinty, and so we have these beautiful influences of these indigenous cultures that are around us. And my stepmother is always asking, oh, are you practicing these Mohawk traditions? And I'm like, no, I don't really know what your traditions are unless you share them with me. And so honoring that she respects the work that I'm doing with this core shamanic practice, and honoring that it is a practice that is, as Michael talks about, universal or near universal in its implementation and knowledge. And so, yeah, there are so many beautiful practices that are out there. And certainly for me, I come from a European background, and the Celtic traditions are part of my traditions, and the Nordic is part of my tradition. And so, again, as a deepening understanding of who we are as a people who have come from specific areas, this work is about connecting and reconnecting to the spirits in this natural world. We are all on one earth, right? And so, as we have different understandings of ways that we can connect into this realm that is our world, and how we can bring healing and how we can restore the balance, is important for all of us to be taking on very seriously right now, especially in the world that we are in. So.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that. I am curious, has your experience with core shamanism helped you connect more with your own Celtic or Norse ancestry?
Yes, absolutely. And the beauty of some of these online trainings is that people can come from around the world. So there's lots of people who are coming from Ireland and taking these courses, and from other parts of
Mhm.
Europe as well. And even from the Mohawk territory, there are students who are reconnecting with what is the spiritual teachings, and the reconnecting to this land-based kind of learning. And
Mhm.
so many of them have gone through the core shamanism and then come back to their own cultural teachings, and stepped into that, and are now reconnecting and learning. So that is a beautiful part of just awakening, that we're all awakening again.
Right, right, which is so important. And so let's talk a little bit about, if you're okay with this, about, so obviously when students take the shamanic journey or the way of the shaman, one of the critical things they're learning is how to journey, how to make it to the compassionate realms, the upper world, the lower world, and meet with those compassionate helping spirits in those locations. But the next thing that's so critical after learning how to journey is to learn how to communicate, to connect, to ask the questions. And this class, Shamanic Divination in Practice, is really all about that, learning how to ask the questions. So, can you talk a little bit about what it's like helping students build those shamanic divination skills?
Yeah, so learning the art of the question, right, is definitely a key, and helping students to understand the process of focusing on what is your real intention around the question that you're asking. And so, peeling back the layers and getting underneath what is coming up for people really does help them to see what's in the heart, what's coming from the heart, and not just always our mind, right? And so this work is the work of the heart. And so helping to use the different tools and the different methodologies that we have to journey to our helping spirits in the upper or lower worlds, or as we deepen in our practice, learning how to enter into this middle world. Non-ordinary reality is also a big part of bringing this work into our daily lives, and making this become a part of who we are. So it's not just a practice that I do certain hours of the day. It's
Right.
it's a living practice. And so the divination is such a key tool to understanding how our helping spirits are wanting to communicate with us, and that different helping spirits communicate in different ways. And so as we are learning their language, as we are learning their metaphors, as we are listening and feeling and sensing with all of our senses, right? So some of us are very visual and we'll see things. Some of us are feeling, and so we feel things more. Some of us hear, how information is coming through. And so as we are deepening in this awakening practice, we are really opening to all of our sensory perceptions, and how we are connecting with our helping spirits and the ways that they want to share information with us. And it is unique and different with each one of those spirits. So that's the beauty of how the divination tools begin to work for us.
Absolutely. Where some helping spirits will communicate entirely with symbols, and others will communicate with words in a language that you understand, and others will just give you an image that tells you the story, tells you the message. So it is wonderful that over time, a student who is maybe especially able to know or to smell or to hear, that the helping spirits that utilize those techniques, they will connect with. Maybe not the first journey, right? So continuing to build those relationships, they will get to a place where they will easily and quickly and efficiently be able to get the answers they need to do the work, to provide assistance with a daily problem or daily task, or when they're working with a client. So it's really all about changing your relationship with your day all day long. It's not just when you're in with a client. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So could you tell us about any experiences with shamanic divination skills, just the divination, that may have resulted in an outcome that was transformative or even a miracle for yourself or for a client?
Yes, early on in my practice, I had the opportunity to work with a client who had a heart attack. And she ended up in the hospital, had open heart surgery, came out of the surgery, everything was good. And then the next day, she got a serious infection. And so now she was on life support. And a family member called and said, "Please, can you come? Can you come?" And so I went and just, gently touched her shoulder. There she was in the ER and had a nurse at the end of her bed, and she was literally hooked up to everything that could keep her life going. And I just connected. I just connected with her spirit and said, "Hey, I see you." And where I saw her was sitting on a mountaintop, kind of looking down into the valley and seeing all of the people that were part of her life and not knowing what to do. And I
Mm.
sat down beside her and I said, "Hey, you've got this infection. That's why you're here." And she goes, "Oh, I wondered what was going on." And I said, you have a choice that you need to make, and you can stay and people will be here to help you, and if you choose to go, people will be here to support you, and it's okay. It's okay. And here's a person who was in a total coma state. And she turned her head ever so slightly and opened her eyes ever so slightly, and I just looked into her eyes and I just nodded and I said, "I'm here. I'm here to support you in whatever way." And she closed her eyes and she just turned her head slightly back, and I just kind of passed her a little bit of power and said, "Whatever you need, I'm here." And then after a time I left, and this was already 9 o'clock at night, so it was late. And as the night progressed, she started to stabilize, and they were able to take her off of the respirator and some of the other support systems. And the next morning, her sister called me and said, "I don't know what happened, but she's out of emergency and she's now in a room and wants to see you." And so I went and saw her that afternoon, and and she was sitting up in bed holding a hot pack to her heart, and she saw me and she said, "Oh, thank you for coming." And I said, "It's good to see you. It's good to see you looking stronger."
Mm-hmm.
She said, you saw me. You saw me on the mountaintop, didn't you? And I said, "Yes, I saw you there." She said, "You helped you helped me. You called me back. I didn't know what to do." She started crying and said, I'm ready to do whatever I need to do to be here." And so after she came out of the hospital, we did a few other healing sessions to just bring her power back and restore.
Right.
And so that was 13 years ago. And, she made some lifestyle changes, and her daughters are married. She's a grandmother now, and she's just living life from a very different perspective of gratitude and service to others in a different kind of way. So that really, that just was so powerful, that session of seeing how the helping spirits can show up for us when we just come from that place of the heart and allow for something to come in, right?
Wow, what a touching example. And I'm so glad that she was comfortable with you being able to share this story, because this story is the kind of story that students could really benefit from hearing, that these miraculous outcomes really can happen with these basic skills. They don't have to be all the way through all the training to the very end
Mm-hmm.
for these miraculous capabilities to be present. Again,
Mm-hmm.
this is all because the helping spirits are working with you. So
Absolutely.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So, if a student is trying to decide whether or not shamanic divination in practice, this second workshop of the online series, the first workshop in the knowledge portion of the online series, is right for them, how would you support them through that decision if they're thinking about taking it but not quite sure?
Well, this is a key. This is a key that's going to unlock a whole deepening understanding of the work and the practice. So, as you had said, in our first class, we're learning how to journey to the upper world and the lower world to meet our helping spirits. And then the way that we deepen in our connection and understanding about how they are here to work with us is what the divination practice is. And so, as we are learning how to connect with them, to ask questions on behalf of ourselves or on behalf of someone else, and so, we start to have an understanding about how we can help others,
Mhm.
right? And that is a bigger part of this work, is how can we be in service. And so learning these divinatory tools are essential for all of the work that is going to come down through all of the other classes that we are doing. And so yeah, just deepening in your understanding of this work is what each class brings. So yeah, divination is a key to the next steps.
So, one of the things about divination is, as you know, cultivating your ability to ask that question. And certainly that's practiced extensively in the workshop and even afterward. Can you talk a little bit about how you support students after they've taken a course?
So after all of the classes that I teach, I always have a review class, and so we get to practice in that review class what you've learned in the class, and really start to integrate, because integration is a big part of this work. Integrating and learning how to trust yourself and trust in these connections and deepening relationships. And so the practice becomes a very important part of the work. So we always have a review class, and then I do a drum circle once a month for those who are in that knowledge series
Hmm.
to again connect with new students who are also practicing and learning, and meeting students who have had maybe deeper time with the practice. And so seeing how it can unfold, and also just creating the community, right?
Hmm.
Creating the community of support for this work, and also knowing that the foundation is also providing community gatherings and
Hmm.
meetings for people to come to, and be a part of something that is that larger supportive community. So these are important ways, yeah, that we can connect. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you offer these. And many faculty members do. And there are people who are not faculty members that also offer drum circles. But you're offering a circle where people are practicing some skills as well. And that review course afterward that you offer is so brilliant and so useful. So I'm thankful for everyone who is able to take a course with you and experience that. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, it's important. It's important. Yeah.
So, different thing about divination I'd like to ask is how do you assist or support potential students or students in the workshop who are a little bit concerned about divination or even afraid due to their experience or exposures with religion or magic?
Hmm. Well, we know that this is not a religion and this is not a magical practice. This is a very deeply independent spiritual understanding that the helping spirits are going to show up for you if you show up and hold an intention and are present for them.
Hmm.
And so, as we are learning these tools and ways of communicating, and ways of understanding that if everything is alive and has a spirit, and we can learn from all of what is here for us to learn from, that it is not a power over you. And perhaps
Right.
that's the biggest difference, is that it is you being empowered by your experiences, and these are very personal to you. And so just reinforcing those understandings and ways of perceiving that they have control over that aspect of the learning.
Hmm. And so, a piece of that, though, is also the conscious mind trying to get in the way,
Oh
right?
yeah.
When, you know, uh, telling you it's not real, you've made it up, coming in with a desired outcome,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So all of those things can get in the way of the divination work. Do you have any tips or ideas for someone who's struggling with putting that conscious mind aside as a silent witness and just being open to the answers, which I know sounds so easy to do, but can be very hard, especially if we are, doing a divinatory journey for someone we really care about. Let's say the client has been told they may have cancer, they've had a biopsy, they're waiting for the results, and they're looking to you for next steps in their spiritual healing journey, and you really want to help, but you also care so deeply that putting that conscious mind sometimes can be harder to set aside. How do
Mhm.
you guide people when they're working through that?
Well, the ego is a very powerful part of who we are, and it needs to have a role. And so, if we can invite the ego to be the observer. And so I suggest to people that, if you can put your ego in the passenger seat,
Hmm.
and you can let your helping spirits be, guiding you on this journey, and you can be observing what's happening. And so sometimes that's a good way of inviting that connection in. The other way I might say is, we're doing a beautiful dance. And so, if you were ever a ballroom dancer, there is one who leads and one who follows. And we are following the lead of, the helping spirits who are, dancing us through these experiences and sharing with us how we are perceiving and interpreting these experiences. And so, Michael talks a lot about becoming the hollow bone. I talk
Hmm.
a lot to the students about becoming the hollow bone. And so when you are feeling like you are coming up with the answer, that is not you being the hollow bone. And so you need to just keep giving that part of your ego the role of sitting in the passenger seat and reminding that part of yourself that it can be the observer and learn from observing. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a practice. It takes time. People don't like to let go of control. They like to be in control. And this is about surrendering control to a deeply compassionate, energetic spirit helper. And
Mm-hmm.
so, people do have trust issues. And so this is a process of building trust that we will be guided in exactly the ways we need to be guided now in this moment. And so to just pay attention to that and come with lightness, come with curiosity, right? I tell them to come with a childlike mind
Mm-hmm.
and let there be, not such a serious kind of intention for the work, but just an allowing and at times a surrendering. You really, in my early days as someone who needed to be in the driver's seat, sometimes we get these illnesses so that we have no energy to fight. So the surrendering, when I really let myself surrender into this process and allowed for these tools of divination to come through, information would come in ways that I could not have ever imagined. And so this is the other beautiful part, is that our helping spirits have such a big perspective on whatever the issue is, that they can come at it from ways that we could never have imagined.
Wow. Beautifully stated, Maury. Thank you so much for describing that. And I do wholeheartedly agree that being able to get to that place. So what's so fun and so interesting is, as everyone learns, when you're starting that journey, your imagination is the beginning of that journey, and then things start to happen that you would have never expected. And that same thing happens with divinatory work, that answers come up that are presented to you in such a way that your imagination really couldn't have made up.
Yep. Yep.
So, shifting gears a little bit, I'd like to talk a little bit about learning from the rock. That is one piece of that's new in, the first workshop. You're really going to these compassionate realms, but working with the rock is working here in the middle world.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's interesting to me is this opens up students to the capacity to really grasp that everything is alive. Now, some people have had this knowing since they were born, and other people, uh, yeah, right, my pen is alive? What are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So, can you talk a little bit about what this opens up in students as far as the learning from the rock?
Well, we can look at the energy and spirit of the rock as a very powerful holding energy for the earth itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so, some of the most important work that we can do requires us to also be really grounded, right? And so the rock provides an opportunity for us to ground ourselves and listen from a different place of stillness. I think this is also rock divination is such a beautiful practice because it really invites us to listen and go in and meet the spirit of the rock, which is a very usually quiet, dense energy of knowledge. It's been around a long time. It's seen a lot and experienced a lot. And so the spirit of the rock can bring in insights and understanding and answers to questions again in ways that are so unexpected because it requires us to really slow down.
Yes.
For those of us who are, caught in this, high speed world of getting things done, um, part of the shamanic teaching is also learning to slow down, and in that process we hear and feel and experience and see things through that shamanic experience because we're slowing down. So the rock divination is a beautiful experience. And as you say, many of us, from the time I was little, rocks have been a fascination to me, and they've spoken to me, and I pick up stones all the time. And with my grandkids now also, have taught them the experience and power of even just to carry a rock in your pocket that helps you to slow down and ground.
Mm-hmm.
These are important tools that we can give children in a time where, so much technology has really impacted on them in ways that I worry, right? I worry how this is going to impact. And so, yes, I have a grandson who just started grade 9, and he's very curious about all of these tools. And so I found a rock for him that will help him stay grounded. And so he's been carrying it in his pocket, and he just reaches
Nice.
in and can feel it. And even just that connection, right? Without doing any divinatory questions
Mm-hmm.
to that rock, it just is there as a support. And so, as we learn these tools of divination and ways of communicating and connecting, it may feel like your imagination is going wild, and how on earth could a rock be alive and have a spirit? But its essence is so, so powerful when we take the time to connect and slow down and see what gifts are there. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, there can be profound wisdom and even profound healing that comes from what the rock has to provide. So it
Absolutely.
is just like trees, just like the building that you live in, they all have a spirit. And so, really opening that up in this workshop, I think, is beautiful and essential for
Yeah.
building, moving on. And
Yeah.
so that leads me to a question about if a student is taking this workshop with you or in their review course afterward, and they wonder what they should take next. What do you share?
So after the divination class, there is a deepening class in the middle world training called worldview, and this understanding that we live in a world, and so how can we deepen in our understanding and worldview of what's there that is trying to teach us about how to be in better relationship with the world around us, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I really do encourage students to take the worldview class to understand how to um, just be in this middle world from a place of seeing that there is possibility to do healing work here on many levels, and all of the shamanic healing, the core shamanic healing work that we do in the healing series happens in this middle world realm. And so you really do need to have an understanding of this middle world and how you can work with it in all of the different ways and the tools that are here and the connections that can be made. So it's a deepening practice, and
Yeah.
I would really encourage that next step.
Oh, wonderful. And yes, realistically, there are certainly folks who are drawn to this work and they're very interested in the healing work and maybe not taking so seriously the knowledge series. And one of the things that I share is until you take these knowledge courses and really build the capacity to hold more power and understand the world around you, the healing work's going to be a little more challenging for you or possibly not even possible.
Yeah.
So this knowledge work is absolutely critical. So I would wholeheartedly agree that Worldview is a phenomenal course. It is not offered in person. There's not an equivalent in person. And this course is really good at helping people grow those skills and grow some confidence and the knowledge of the protection that the helping spirits provide in the middle world when they're doing work in the middle world. So it's really helping build that. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
wonderful.
And the other two that continue on that path, the personal transformation and the local and global change, those are also so key as part of this understanding of how to bring shamanic knowledge into your life, as opposed, in the personal transformation, and also into the world around you, and how you can bring these teachings to, local projects, or, even a global kind of link into how to help and support what's happening in our world right now.
Mm-hmm. And I
Yeah.
can assure you that that coursework and those steps were utilized in developing this podcast.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We use this work in our lives in so many different ways once you've built those skills up. So, absolutely. So, is there anything more that you would like to share with us, Moray, about this course, Shamanic Divination in Practice, that you feel really helps people with their everyday life? Just, getting their kids ready for school, going to work, everyday life, not about healing, anything about it that you feel that they could actually use as soon as they've taken the course for themselves.
Well, just to have this understanding that you have these tools and these ways to from the moment you wake up and look out the window and decide how what's happening on the other side of the window is going to impact on your day. And so, I think once you develop a shamanic understanding, a shamanic worldview, there is just this uh, deeper understanding and deeper gratitude, and a playfulness, a deeper kindness, a deeper compassion, a deeper level of patience with understanding where others might be on their journey. And I find myself that when I'm really in a grounded place with my helping spirits, and I've been doing this work and connecting with them and getting answers to questions, that how I go out into the world is different. I'm just a much kinder, more patient, more compassionate person, and
Mm-hmm.
reach out to others, whether that's holding a door open in the grocery store or just smiling and waving to somebody as they're walking down the street. And people appreciate those interactions, that we are all interconnected. And so the energy that we are bringing into the world does have an impact. It ripples out. And so if we want to counteract some of that negative energy that's going on in our world, we just need to raise that volume of our own inner power and inner knowing and inner compassion and kindness.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Moray, for joining us today. I'm so appreciative of your time and your perspective on how this course and really your how it's influenced you even as you've taught this course repeatedly over time.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
be in touch soon.
It just keeps going deeper.
Yep.
So thank you, Kerri, for taking the time to bring these teachings out in this way. It's a beautiful practice. So I hope people really feel that. Yeah.
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.